rail's very expensive to put in. I have a system called trackless trains. You can just look online and see. Rolled out all over the world. It's basically a cross between a bus and a train. We did a presentation to the council. Simon wrote about it. AT actually cancelled the trial. They just said no. And then they issued a $1 billion contract to Ritchie's for 175 buses for West Auckland and South Auckland. We could have done that for probably 300-400 million. We could fund it ourselves. It's quite simple. You can do it with ground leases, and working with the central government now with the National Infrastructure Fund. I missed something. The council can be a partner. It's called a PPP. It's simple. See, we don't need more rail, because one of the problems is that I've had with Kiwi Rail, I'm not very good at these ones. It's that simple. So a trackless train runs on roads. It's a cross between the bus and the train. It's not great. It's easy to fund. Can be autonomous, which is a bit scary for New Zealanders, but will run them with drivers. They go both ways. I'm trying to get one from the bottom of Queen Street to go to Dominion Road. The funding's there. It's simple. But the problem is AT.
Okay, can I answer that then?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I think it's for me. Look, hold on. No, I was just checking because last time Brown went AWOL, there was a public disaster. Anyway, so you're supposed to laugh. Anyway, look. Anyway, so look, no, there is a place for that. I remember when the trams, you know, those electric trams used to run along K Road, and I used to catch them when I was young. And there's a place for that, but I believe the place for long-range transport, and this is the failure of cycle, is that you try cycling 30 or 40 kilometres in the rain, but to get back to your point, it doesn't work. Besides, I know a couple of people that got killed on the road. It's dangerous cycling, especially in South Auckland. But to move back to your point, the thing is, it is very useful. But we need to use feeder buses for the rail, but also your point, inside the areas. While we might have a ring system, it doesn't cover everything. When I was in London, we used to catch the underground, and then we'd still have to either use a mini cab or a bus, and your thing can help fill in with the others if it's less costly, and we need to look at that, all these spaces that need to be filled. So what I say to this is, bring it along with when I'm there, and I promise we'll look at it.
Four different modes. We have walking, cycling, buses,
and we might actually see them to do more actions.
This may be our last big round question, and it's about water and infrastructure and climate change. It is going to become, according to the council proposals now, harder to build on floodplains, at-risk areas in the coastal settlement, and also other low-lying areas will be. It'll become much more difficult. What would you do to protect communities from future climate events, and how should the city handle growth in vulnerable areas? We are starting with T.
Okay, now, vulnerable areas, well, number one, you don't build them in floodplains. How about some sensible development in areas where you can expand? That's a good point. And with regard to the rest of the ideas here of water and other infrastructure, how about increasing our catchment? How about not taking all the water and relying on taking it from the Waikato River? What we really need here is to stop, also look at Watercare. You know, when they set up Watercare, the first thing they did was double the rates, because they say, we gave you water, now we're also charging for taking away. I want to see whether we need to shut down Watercare, just like we need to actually ask the government to shut down these little bandit kingdoms, AT and the rest of the CCOs, because how can we function properly when half of our resources, or a large portion of our resources, are controlled by these little independent organisations? We must have all of our resources under our control so we have the scale to be able to take action, and also keep ask for our GST back. Let that money stay in Auckland. We are the main gateway to the world here, and it's about time Auckland was treated like that. And even, for example, my idea of that bridge, turn that into the Azure Arch, make people come here, tourism. Come here like I went to San Francisco, I wanted to walk the Golden Gate Bridge. Come to the Azure Arch, look at Auckland. We want to make it the best it can be. And as for water, how about cutting down on all these people, these CEOs with their giant salaries? Let them, if they want private sector levels, then go to the private sector. No golden handshakes. So I say here, with regard to water, we have to also look at expanding out to satellite areas, like I've said. Thank you. Congestion is strangling Auckland and its development. What we actually need is a proper rail system. We've got a third world rail transport system. And I took a look, I was down at Britomart and looked up at the list and looked okay until I realised that 2 of them were actually buses. And the other one connecting to the airport, that was a bus too. So if you remove that misleading information, you find out we have still got the skeleton of a great system. What we have to do is connect the airport first. But we have these wasteful ideas from Brown and the rest. Last time, 14 billion to connect a show pony type link to the Britomart. It's only 7 kilometres from Puanui. Build it first. Then we need a ring system around the city. We connect Sylvia Park to New Lynn. Suddenly we've got a ring rail you can use both ways round, like in London and other places. We need to connect the North Shore. We need to connect it through West Auckland and over that bridge. We need to connect from Manukau right through Howick in, and suddenly you can go anywhere in the city, like when I was living in London, anywhere in the city, and get where you want to be, because no one will use that system as long as it is incompetent, it's slow, it doesn't take you where you want to go, and it costs too much money. We need to look at building a proper rail transport system. Now, it's going to cost money. Last time they lampooned, I remember 2 elections ago, they lampooned Tamahiri for his idea of a big bridge, except it's actually a good idea. Not only will it get us to the shore and bring the people across, get them off the road. All these ideas of bus lanes halves the number of lanes, doubles the congestion. Putting on trucks, I'd get the trucks off like they do in Australia during rush hour. You have to start clearing the roads of these things, because if you want the city moving again, and time limits. I've watched that thing, the build of the motorway at Papakura, it's sitting there for 3 or 4 years. Time limit penalties. There is no proper tendering. What we need to do is come down hard on that and build a proper system for once. In the memory of Sir W. Robinson, let's get the city moving again. What's the most important thing people need? First 3 things. Food, clothing, and shelter. You have to remember, these aren't houses, they're not blocks of gold, they are homes. The reason we've got a lot of destruction of communities is because, unlike when I was young, we lived in the same house for 30, 40, 50 years. Now we have communities of gypsies because they're all renting. In South Auckland now, nobody can afford to buy a house. $1 million, no one has that salary. And also, what's happening? There are 20, 30,000 plus ghost homes that are empty here. People buy them and invest. We got landlords as well. We need to force people to free up that. And land banking. Like they do in Canada, we can force the sale of some of these houses by increasing the rates, make it hard for them so we can free up those properties. It's about time we freed up those properties so people can use them. And also more building. Out at Drury, the council canned 5,000 homes because they didn't want to pay the infrastructure. Where I am, other ones aren't built. They've sat there for years because no water, no infrastructure. They were paid to do infrastructure. Now it's about time council also looked at satellite towns like in other countries. So what we want to do is make sure that we don't just use up all the green spaces, and building these big 15 stories won't work near rail if no one will use it. So what we need to do is focus less on just the money and everything else, and focus on looking after the people of Auckland. And it's about time we got rid of all these professional politicians and started saying, what can we do to help people? Because that must always be the bottom line of what we do in council. Thank you. Best mistakes he makes.
Nobody knows who he is.
Like he's trying to get a free ride in, hoping that he can get it as the incumbent.
Why didn't you like Wayne Walker on...
Because they voted against the sale of the airport shares.
Yeah, but the idea is not to sell assets, it's to get assets to generate cash flow. You then take that cash flow and convert to a bond. And you take your 135 Albert Street, and your books it's worth 200 million, but if you convert it into a bond and sell the bond, it's worth 500, but you have a sinking fund. So in the Auckland books, you've got about $25 billion of regenerational fund. I've spoken to the government, they have 1.2 to 1.3 trillion, and they keep giving it away.
So where? They're giving it away to who?
It's all about outsourcing, not outsourcing. Now, when you go to the funding of AT for the next 10 years for roads, it's $13 billion. So why doesn't council have their own roading authority?
Having more power. Does anybody want to tell us anything that they think local boards should be able to do that they can't do now? Karen?
More funding to go towards procurement and contracting for local boards.
Can you put that in plain English? Contracting what?
Contracting for parks, contracting for upgrades on roads.
So local boards
I don't know about
already
that.
in charge of local parks.
Yeah.
No, but the contract for cleaning up the parks and the maintenance.
So they should be issuing the contracts.
Not necessarily issuing, but it should be localised contracts, which can be with the local boards.
You mean local contractors?
Yes.
Yeah, I think a devolution of some power from council, like was suggested by my friend, to be able to do things like we were at the birds or whatever, the ecological thing the other day, and they had these areas that could be used for sanctuaries, for other things, but they don't have the power or the funds for it. How about giving more power down to those little areas so they can do these things without having to get everything cleared by the politicians up the top?
So at the moment now, with major regional...
Best mistakes he makes.
Nobody knows who he is.
Like he's trying to get a free ride in, hoping that he can get it as the incumbent.
Why doesn't he like Wayne Walker on...
Because they voted against the sale of the airport shares.
Yeah, but the idea is not to sell assets, it's to get assets to generate cash flow. You then take that cash flow and convert to a bond. And you take your 135 Albert Street, and your books it's worth 200 million, but if you convert it into a bond and sell the bond, it's worth 500, but you have a sinking fund. So in the Auckland books, you've got about $25 billion of regenerational fund. I've spoken to the government, they have 1.2 to 1.3